Ursula Herrmann. She was described by everyone who knew her as a fun and kind little girl, a bright spark of joy in the peaceful Bavarian countryside of Germany. Born into a loving family, Ursula was happiest surrounded by music. Her slender fingers often danced across piano keys, and by physical activity, delighting in gymnastics. In the green patch of Bavaria where she grew up, there was a beloved stretch of forest, a hidden haven frequented by hikers, bikers, and joggers alike. People came seeking peace, seeking adventure, unaware of the dark tragedy that would soon be tied to those very trees. It was on September 15th, 1981, that 10-year-old Ursula set off on what should have been a simple bike ride home after spending time at her cousin's house. The school day had ended, and Ursula had just finished her gymnastics lesson. After a short visit and some playful laughter with her cousin, she mounted her petite red bicycle, the one with training wheels she still refused to give up, and headed back. At that time of year, autumn had just begun to hint at its arrival. The evenings cooled fast, and by 7:30 p.m., the sky was already dimming, but still bright enough to ride safely. The path home wound through forested trails. Ursula's route was familiar. Normally, it took about 10 minutes, but when night fell, those same trails became starkly different, quiet and empty. Her mother waited. At first, she went about preparing dinner, but 20 minutes passed, then 30. Ursula was late. Anxiety crept in. She called her sister, asking casually, maybe she missed the phone. But the answer came as a shock. Ursula had left nearly 30 minutes ago. Fear clicked on like a switch. Ursula's father rushed outside, calling her name into the dusk. Ursula's uncle joined in. Soon, neighbors were alerted. Yet, disconcertingly, there was no trace, no footprints, no bicycle tracks, nor a single clue. The police were contacted. Within the hour, search teams, police officers and firefighters fanned out into the forest. It began to rain, and that would later be critical, because muddy conditions hampered tracking dogs. But hope remained. Hours passed. Darkness fully fell. The forest should have been silent, except for shouts, and still, no Ursula. Just before midnight, a breakthrough. Her red bicycle was found, lying near a small clearing off the known path, but that was all. No Ursula. It was now clear. The bike was abandoned at the forest, and Ursula was no longer with it. Families, volunteers, local media, everyone joined in the hunt. The next morning brought more searchers. By radio and newspaper, Ursula's description was shared. About 4 feet 7 inches tall, blonde hair, last seen wearing a gray woolen cardigan and reddish sandals. Everyone prayed for her safe return. Then, 2 days holai, the phone rang at the Herrmann home. Ursula's parents answered. Only silence on the other end. Then, a brief jingle, resembling a tune from a local radio station. It froze them in their tracks. Was it a child playing a sick joke, an obsessive listener, or something more sinister? That night, more calls came. All that eerie radio. The police listened too, unsure of intent, but they gathered gear to record the calls in hopes of finding clues. Then, the case leapt forward. On the evening of September 17th, a grim letter was delivered to Ursula's father. The envelope rattled as he opened it. Inside, cut-out letters from newspapers, German words pieced together like a ransom note from nightmares. Roughly translated, it read, "We have kidnapped your daughter. If you ever want to see her alive again, pay us $500,000 US. Do not involve the police. If you refuse, if you inform anybody, she will die this day." It was dated a day earlier. A delayed attempt at terror. The kidnappers warned that a phone call would confirm everything and that no deviation from their plan would be tolerated. When the next call came, Ursula's mother answered. She barely whispered, "We'll pay," but she begged for proof of a life. They got nothing. No voices, no sounds, just cold silence. On September 21st, another letter arrived. It contained instructions. Meat instructions were then sent privately, not publicly, telling Ursula's father to drive a yellow Fiat 600 into the forest by himself, carrying the full ransom. No mention of Ursula's safety, no confirmation that she was even still alive. For the Herrmanns, an ordinary family of modest means, gathering $500,000 was impossible. Yet, the community came together, raising funds. The state offered financial backing. Suddenly, the money was there, but there was still no final instruction, no pickup point, no phone calls, just silence. Authorities intensified their search. More than 100 volunteers scoured the forest. 10 dogs grid searched. They were ready, prepared to invest weeks in the hunt. But on the fourth day of this intensified search, September 19th, a major discovery was made. It had rained again overnight. The forest floor was soaked. Visibility was dim. Volunteers were nearing the limits of their grid. Someone cried out, "Help! Here!" Deep in a 2-meter deep hole, 800 meters off the main trail, an officer's shovel hit wood. Another officer helped dig away sod and leaves. They found a plank wrapped in a blanket. Beneath it, another wooden panel. Bolts fastened it. They unbolted it, pried it open. Inside, Ursula Herrmann, lying still. Officers described the horror. The body of a 10-year-old placed within what could only be described as a miniature, hidden tomb. Tears were shed. It was incomprehensible. Her parents were rushed to the scene. The mother collapsed. The father collapsed again and again, asking, was she hurt before she died? Medical examiners later estimated Ursula had died 1 to 5 hours before being buried. She must have been conscious, terrified, and alone. The box was found to be about 4.6 feet deep, roughly 2.5 by 2 feet wide. Inside was a seat, fashioned like a makeshift toilet, bottles of water, soda, candy, and even 20 books. It was as if the kidnapper intended to keep her alive. But when? She suffocated. They appeared to have built ventilation, yet no means for actual air circulation existed. It was a twisted cruelty. Investigators concluded 2 or more people must have built and buried that heavy box, over 100 pounds, and done so at a remote location. They suspected it was someone local, familiar with the suspects emerged. One prominent name was Werner Maschen, a quick-tempered craftsman known for his woodworking skills, even accused of cruelty to animals. Fingerprints collected at the forest didn't match him, nor any civilian, but detectives believed his physical abilities and access to tools made him highly suspect. Another suspect, Klaus Fair, an unemployed engineer and friend of Werner's, who had confessed that Werner once asked him to dig a hole near that forest, the perfect grave. Investigators were initially hopeful. They rushed him to the hole's location, and nothing. Fair admitted he had fabricated the story. Investigators were crestfallen. Werner remained uncharged. The case stalled. Years passed. Cold files lay dormant until the late 2000s, when prosecutors dusted off the evidence. Because in Germany, kidnapping cases carry a 30-year statute of limitations. Surely a sense of urgency returned in 2007. Klaus Fair had died. Werner Maschen was still alive. Investigators collected fresh DNA, sampling Werner's saliva, and compared it to DNA traces found on the box. No match. Though no match wasn't proof of innocence, it dismissed a key forensic link. Still, they pressed on. Entering Werner's home, they uncovered an old tape recorder. Could it connect? Remember the jingle in the ransom calls? A sound engineer analyzed the tape recorder's audio and identified the same tune on that exact device as had been used to call Ursula's parents. Authorities arrested Werner in May 2008. In 2009, his high-profile trial began. He stood, defiant. "I'm no saint," he admitted. "Sometimes rude, maybe shady in my life, but I did not kidnap that child." The court heard evidence, his violent temper, once he locked the family dog in the basement freezer as punishment. His children gave testimony about his cruelty. During cross-examination, he claimed, "I was exiled to Siberia," an explanation for each cruelty. He insisted he was being painted as a monster. Prosecutors argued that he was capable. The box's construction, the victim's remote burial location, and damn tape recorder. In the end, they convicted him. Life in prison. The justice system ruled that the tape recorder alone tied him to the ransom calls. The severe depth of the box, the coordinated two-man effort, all matched his profile. But not everyone was convinced. Ursula's brother, Michael Herrmann, sat through the trial, listening to every word. He defended his father's reputation, but he remained unconvinced that Werner was truly guilty. After the criminal verdict, he opened a civil case in 2013, not about kidnapping, but for defamation regarding his own hearing loss, tinnitus, which he blamed on testifying under stress. His civil case judged that defendants still had to compensate Michael, reinforcing that the court didn't believe Werner enough to free him of civil liability, but Michael still insisted Ursula didn't get true justice. He never pursued it again. Then, in March 2021, another twist. Germany's media outlets received an anonymous letter, a confession. The writer claimed to have been in high school at the time of Ursula's disappearance. They wrote that they had snatched the child. They were sorry, but they included no evidence, no motive, No further detail. Investigators dismissed it. The statute had run out. The case was officially closed. Ursula's body remained in the forest as a silent testimony to a heinous crime, and Werner Mädchen remains incarcerated, yet always under a cloud of uncertainty. This story is a haunting reminder that sometimes, even when we think we're getting somewhere, we aren't. That tape recorder might have been the smoking gun. Yet, was it definitive? Maybe, but maybe not. Ursula never got justice. Her parents lost their only child. Werner may have been guilty, or he may have been framed. Who buried the box? Who constructed that coffin beneath the forest floor? The questions still linger, and maybe that's the cruelest fate of all. This next story centers on a young woman named Kaylee Muthart. Kaylee was a bright, determined student, known for her academic excellence and ambition. During high school, she was even part of the National Honor Society. Her future seemed full of potential, but everything began to shift when she turned 17. That year, Kaylee made the unexpected decision to leave school, not because she lacked motivation, but because life outside the classroom was becoming increasingly difficult. She struggled with heart issues and worked long hours to save up for a car. The weight of responsibility became too much, and she chose to take a break, hoping to protect her GPA and return stronger later. But what started as a pause slowly turned into something much more troubling. By the time she turned 18, Kaylee had begun experimenting with alcohol, then marijuana. At first, it didn't seem alarming, but Kaylee later admitted that addiction had run in her family, and deep down, she feared she might be walking a similar path. Faith played a major role in her life. Kaylee was a devoted Christian. One evening, while smoking with a friend, she experienced something unusual. She described it as deeply spiritual, like she had drawn closer to God. But something about that moment felt off. She later suspected the substance had been altered with something much stronger. From that point forward, her life began unraveling. She lost her job. Her relationship began to fall apart. Anxiety mounted, and her coping mechanisms took a darker turn. She tried other substances and was soon diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Looking back, Kaylee said it finally explained why her emotions felt like extremes, soaring highs and crushing lows. Eventually, she began chasing the feeling from that strange night, trying to understand what had made it so intense. That search led her to far more dangerous substances. Days blurred together. She went without sleep, began hallucinating, and her grip on reality weakened. Her behavior changed, her appearance changed, and those around her grew increasingly concerned. Her family intervened, urging her to seek help, but Kaylee wasn't ready. She drifted from one place to another, her mind becoming more clouded. And then, one winter morning, everything reached a breaking point. On February 6, 2018, Kaylee experienced a severe mental health crisis. According to her later statements, she believed she was on a divine mission. Disoriented and overwhelmed, she wandered along train tracks, convinced she was being guided by something greater. What happened next would alter her life forever. In that moment of confusion and distress, Kaylee made a decision that resulted in a life-changing injury. Thankfully, a passerby, a local pastor, found her and rushed to help. Emergency responders arrived just in time, and she was immediately hospitalized. She remained unconscious for 2 days. When she finally woke up, she couldn't see. She had lost her vision completely, and yet, in the silence and darkness, Kaylee says she found something she hadn't felt in years: peace. She described it as a turning point. After hitting rock bottom, she was determined to rebuild her life. She committed herself to recovery, attending support groups and therapy. In her own words, "It took losing my sight to truly open my eyes, but I'm here. I survived, and I'm not going." Kaylee's story is heartbreaking, but also inspiring. It's a stark reminder of how quickly a life can spiral and how strength can still emerge from the depths of darkness. The Gladbeck hostage crisis was a terrifying and tragic incident that took place in Germany in mid-August of 1988, specifically from the 16th to the 18th. The young woman you're seeing on screen, her name was Silke Bischoff. She was just 18 years old at the time. Silke had heartbreaking been taken hostage by 2 armed bank robbers, both men with criminal records and violent pasts. Their names were Hans-Jürgen Rösner and Dieter Degowski. The duo eventually hijacked a public bus, forcing their way on board while it carried around 30 innocent passengers. After reaching a specific location, most of the passengers were allowed to leave, but not all. 2 remained behind as hostages. Several lives would ultimately be claimed in this horrifying chain of events. The crisis began on August 16, 1988, when the 2 men masked and armed, stormed into a Deutsche Bank branch just as it opened its doors to the public. A nearby bystander noticed the suspicious men entering and quickly called the police at around 8 a.m. Just as the robbers were attempting to flee the bank, they spotted a police car arriving. In response, they rushed back inside and took multiple hostages. Shots were fired inside the building as the men demanded a getaway car and ransom money. Negotiations lasted for hours. Incredibly and tragically, the authorities provided not only a 6-figure ransom, but also handed over an Audi 100 for the men to use as their escape vehicle. At approximately 9:45 a.m., the criminals picked up Marion Loblick, Hans's girlfriend. The very next day, on August 17th, the group hijacked a public bus around 7 p.m., once again seizing control while it was full, around 30 passengers in total. And here's where things took a truly bizarre and disturbing turn. The criminals invited journalists and media crews to the scene. Yes, reporters were conducting interviews with the armed men, while hostages were still being held at gunpoint. Unbelievably, some of the reporters even gave the criminals photographs of undercover police officers, just so the robbers wouldn't be tricked if an exchange plan was put in place. Others offered drinks and snacks in exchange for a few words. In one chilling moment, a reporter even asked Silke Bischoff what it felt like to have a gun pressed against her body. During the media frenzy, Marion asked to use the bathroom and managed to sneak away. Police quickly apprehended her. When Hans learned of this, he demanded a trade. He would release one hostage, but only if Marion was returned. His threat was horrifying. For every 5 minutes that passed without an agreement, he would kill a hostage. This brutal ultimatum led to the death of a 15-year-old boy who had bravely tried to protect his sister. The police, in fact, did intend to trade Marion back for one of the hostages, but in a devastating blunder, they broke the handcuff key during the process. Valuable time was lost. Medical help arrived over 20 minutes later, far too late. The boy died just hours after reaching the hospital. Hans and Dieter, now desperate, made the decision to drive the bus away. During the chase, a police officer died after colliding with a truck. The bus crossed into the Netherlands at approximately 2:30 a.m., and about 3 hours later, the criminals released 5 hostages, including 3 children. The release came only after Dutch police threatened to end all negotiations if the kids were not freed. A second getaway car was once again provided, and the robbers fled with 2 remaining hostages. But finally, on August 18th, around 2 p.m., German police rammed the car, completely immobilizing it. A chaotic gunfight broke out between officers and the 2 armed men. One of the 2 remaining hostages managed to escape during the chaos, but Silke Bischoff was not so lucky. She was struck in the heart by a bullet and died on the scene. As for Hans-Jürgen Rössner and Dieter Degowski, both were captured alive and later sentenced to lengthy prison terms.